Thank you all for coming. This is very exhilarating. It's very exciting to present this project that I've spent the last 3 years of my life on. If it weren't for the sponsorship and support of Key West Art and Historical Society, we would not have been able to do this project to begin with. You know, it was something that appeared in my email box, 6 years ago or whatnot, a national parks artist residency on one of the most remote national parks in the United States, a place that I was very much aware of, a place that I knew I had to get back to. I'm going to dive into this presentation I have a little bit more here in a second, and it'll show some of that history, but it's been a real pleasure to bring this project to fruition, and I could not be more pleased to be here to share that experience with you all. So thank you all very much. Little bit of my my history. I grew up in the Keys. I grew up fishing for mangrove snapper off the dock. At Chica Lodge, was on the far left photo in the little fishing competitions, trying to reel in the biggest prize 12-inch snapper I could. Used to catch sea trout off the dock, and so let me take a step back. I'm from Key Largo. I'm not from Key West. So just up the road for those of you. And it's just been a real pleasure to have been brought up in a place like this. I got to see what it was like to fish in the backcountry, and the Florida Keys, the Everglades, see the reefs, Molasses Reef, the Upper Keys, all the way down to Key West, Snipes Key, Content Keys. All these places have just inspired me tremendously over the years. And they continue to inspire me, and I'm constantly amazed by the things that you can experience when you're out there on a glass calm day, drifting across a beautiful sand flat or seagrass flat, and have this safari of life around you. And I'm just really constantly blown away by what you can still experience in the Keys, and it's what continues to drive me to be a photographer in the first place, and this is where it stems from. This is, again, some of my work history. I've been extremely fortunate to work with some incredible organizations like Bonefish and Tarpon Trust. For those who fly fish are aware of the backcountry fisheries that are so abundant and healthy down here, I was able to swim and document a bonefish spawning aggregation for the first time last year off the Upper Keys, and this is a cover photo of that experience. Very memorable experience for me. The fly fish journal, love the fly fish. Again, that stems from my love of drifting and just finding these incredibly special shallow water ecosystems that just go on for miles and miles of seagrass and everything else that accompanies that. And then, of course, spearfishing the wrecks of the Upper Keys. And that's a good friend of mine, Captain Tony Young, that I was very fortunate enough. I went out there and documented him shooting his first wahoo with one of his best friends who's since passed. So it's a very memorable experience for all of us. But some of that history that I've been able to work on down here in the Keys. And now to get into the Tortugas a little bit, now that you have a little bit of that backstory. The first time I ever visited the Dry Tortugas was in 2015 with my father, who's sitting here in the front row, and he took us down there. I wasn't really sure what to expect. It's an island 70 miles west of Key West. I'd assume the fishing was pretty good. But we got so much more than what we were looking for, and I think we camped out there for 2 nights from what I believe, and brought a kayak down, a tandem kayak. That was a little bit challenging, paddling together at times, but had a lot of fun regardless. Caught my first ever bonefish on fly, swam the moat wall, and wherever you went, I think the first observation that just really took me by surprise was the abundance of life everywhere I looked. I could step into the water, jump in, right there off the moat wall, and be witness to something I'd never seen in the Upper Keys before, and just have it immediately accessible in front of my face. A giant school of pilchards with black grouper, feeding right off the sand. Something that doesn't really happen, or that I'm aware of in the rest of the Florida Keys. And catching snapper off the dock to cook over the, the grill back at the campsite. Little things like that that just made me realize how healthy the fisheries and the ecosystems were of the Tortugas. And that initial trip really inspired me. And, we left that island, and I just remember thinking to myself, I have to get back here, and I have to spend more time here. I have to see what else is out there, because this place is mind-blowingly beautiful, and it feels like you're going back in time when you get out there. And like it says, I was hooked. Cue 6 years later. I get an email for an artist residency from the National Parks Arts Foundation. You apply for a residency to live on Loggerhead Key, the most remote island in the Florida Keys archipelago, 3 miles west, it's 3 miles west of the fort. And I had been applying, or let me take a step back. I'd applied to this residency for 3 years with an ex-girlfriend, and we never got it, unfortunately, but also fortunately, because on that 4th year, obviously we had ended our relationship, and I was really hungry and looking to apply to this residency again, and desperate for an artist partner to join me on this mission. And I really was struggling to find somebody to come with me, and luckily, this guy Austin Armstrong, who's also sitting in the crowd over here to your left, I somehow convinced him to tag along, to apply with me, and to see if this would, just throw it out there and see what our chances were, and see what happens. So we applied as a partnership, and I think 2 weeks, pretty quickly, last minute, 2 weeks before the actual residency began in August of 2021, they called us up and told us that we had been awarded this unique opportunity. And so we had the provision for 30 days to live remote off-grid for, pretty last minute, but amazing experience that you're gonna see a lot of photos from. And let me lay the groundwork here, right? So this is, for those who haven't seen a map or know about the Dry Tortugas, this is a park map of the Dry Tortugas National Park. And so that island on the far left, that's Loggerhead Key, that's where the residency was based. And Garden Key, which is where the iconic Civil War era fort is, sits right in the middle of that 1 mile radius circle. And there's a lot of regulation in the park. There's a lot of areas you can and can't fish. You have to be very careful about where you're going, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a beautiful thing about the park. But this gigantic 90-degree angled line kind of that cuts down, it creates this quadrant in the northwestern section of the park. Almost everything within that is off limits to fishing and anchoring. You cannot do much of anything in that zone, which is wonderful, and that's why when we lived on Loggerhead Key, there's so much abundance. The ecosystems and fisheries are very healthy there, because you can't have as much of a line in the water. You can't even anchor in the sand. It doesn't matter where you are. You can moor up to a few mooring balls that are around the island itself. There's a wreck out there known as the Windjammer that you can moor up to, but anchoring is completely off limits, and made for a very unique place to call home for a month and to explore. And then to the east, everything to the east of that 90-degree angle, you are allowed to fish, catch and keep, and anchor. And then a very unique thing about the park, which we loved, and which was necessary for Austin's specific artist project, was you can fish and catch and keep within that 1 mile radius circle that surrounds Garden Key there. So it's within the no-take zone. And it's just a gigantic 1 mile circle. You have to be very careful. There are these huge red buoys that mark the 1 mile radius. So, you'll see photos from this little dinghy we brought out there. We were constantly going back and forth because we had to catch dinner, right? So, again, just a little bit closer look. And here's Garden Key from the seaplane on descent. And it just gives you that idea of what, when you're flying in, you're just constantly wondering, wow, what is this place? Where are we right now? I cannot believe that there's a gigantic, one of the largest brick masonry structures in the Western Hemisphere is sitting on a sandbar in the Gulf of Mexico. Wrap your mind around that. How did they build that here? And the fact that it's still there to this day is truly remarkable. And creates, in my opinion, one of the most unique destinations on the planet. There is no other place like this that I can think of. And the waters surrounding in this photo, much of this is that 1 mile radius I was just talking about that is just, full of life and full of incredible, the fisheries that you can find just sitting off the main dock there, where those 2 boats are tied up to the dock in front of the fort. It's the main dock, and you'll see sharks there every day, tarpon every day, giant schools of pilchards. It's really amazing to just walk and walk laps around the fort and stare off into this great vista. You see hammerhead sharks and all sorts of things if you sit there and are patient and observant. And again, just a little bit more of that map from above this park. It's a unique location because the currents over the years have dug out these deep, deep channels that run through and around these extremely shallow waters and flats. And as far as my experience goes in the Upper Keys, there aren't many locations that provide this kind of bathymetry, and it's very much unique in the sense where you can go from 40 feet, 60 feet of water in the channels up to 5, 6, 3, 1 feet in those sandbar areas, Bird Key Bank down on the left. It's so dynamic, and for us to have have kayaks and whatnot, you can just do so much in such a small, compact area, and it allows for very dynamic days. And you'll see photos as well. So Garden Key is what the island that the fort is on is known as, and then Bush Key, it comes over just to the right there. You can see that, and then this island here. This is an older satellite imagery, so this island has actually grown substantially, but Long Key, that shallow water flat there, has been built up over the years and has turned into this, what once was a gigantic, large frigate rookery, but so much just habitat. It's constantly shifting. Every storm moves these islands around. The photos that I'm going to go into will showcase that to an extent. One of the first photos, Loggerhead Key. This is one of those vistas that when I was camping out here with my father for the first time, you stare across this 3 mile body of water at this site, and it just is this such a mystical place. You're just constantly wondering what's out there. Like, I gotta get to that island. It's so photogenic. It's so beautiful. And when you're camping there, you have to kayak to get to the island. There's no other, it's very difficult to access unless you're a volunteer with the park or have your own boat. That's the best case scenario. But if you're camping there, you have to make that trek. And if the weather's good, you're not gonna make it there, unless you really want to risk it. And some people do. And we had a radio on us most of the time out there, and we had to, keep an eye out, help the park keep an eye out for those people who attempted that journey quite often, which was interesting. A lot of people underestimating their kayaking abilities. And here's that satellite view of Loggerhead Key, that our home, really, for the month that we lived there during the residency. And so there's a number of different buildings on the island itself. The old lighthouse keeper's home, the house where they keep the reverse osmosis water system that keeps the volunteers and park staff hydrated. We lived in one of the older. We lived in a home which I actually don't know. Curtis might be here at some point, but good friend park ranger. It might have been the old lighthouse keeper's home, but where we lived was in this house right here. And we weren't camping, we weren't roughing it, like a lot of people ask me that. We weren't living out of a tent, cooking fish over the fire every night, although we probably would have liked that. Wouldn't have minded that one bit. But this is the house is all shuttered up right before one of the storms we had to go through out there, and it was paradise. It's a home that is usually occupied by transient scientists that come through the park to do research on the numerous amounts of green and loggerhead sea turtle nests on the island, fisheries, seagrass, whatever it is. This is one of those homes that people can base themselves out of to do this work that this park is so famous for. It's really amazing how many people are out here. Archaeologists. It's home to a lot of incredibly intelligent, smart people who just want to explore and learn from this destination. And we were fortunate to be one of the artist duos that were brought out here for that. And while we lived out there that month, during that month, you know, when the weather was bad, and I'm just going to take a step back, but, you know, during that month, it was, you know, every day was different. And we knew that going into it. And we understood that the weather could change on a moment's notice. We're 3 miles west of the fort. We had a radio that was our, you know, main contact to Garden Key, the park rangers, and law enforcement if we needed them. And we had to be self-reliant in this journey, right? We had to be completely self-reliant and aware that we were off-grid. We were removed from much of any sort of support, any help that was needed. We had to keep our wits about us and play things safe, play things smart. We couldn't just go off and drive it, take our boat, you know, 10 miles in one direction because we wanted to go fish for some remote reef. You know, it was different every day, and we lived every day by the weather. Really, the weather dictated that destination and how we would plan our days. And so when it was windy, we would circumnavigate and work with the national park's natural resource interns, where it was usually 1 to 2 on the island, to do sea turtle nesting surveys. There were, you know, when we were there in August of 2021, I don't remember the specific number, but there was, you know, 100+ green and loggerhead sea turtle nests on the island at any given point during that month. And so every day we would wake up and walk the 3-mile radius around this park, around the island, at sunrise, and, you know, look for fresh sea turtle tracks in the sand. And not a bad life. And we just, you know, would have our coffee in the mornings, and I'd have my camera. Austin would have it, you know, whatever he had, and yeah, sorry, and wander and look at this, and it was a real pleasure getting to learn and appreciate and observe this kind of science in the field, and that's something that we learned a lot from. And again, this is one of the natural resource interns, you know, digging out a nest that had already hatched to recover what they call pipped turtles. Turtles that have grown with some sort of, you know, abnormality or what's the word? But, you know, something that's got a short fin or something like that, that couldn't dig out of the nest themselves. So they go in and dig and recover these turtles to then potentially give them a second chance at life and help them recover and send them off on their way. And that's what they'd put them in that little bucket there. And every day at sunset, we'd come out and release them. I don't know if I have too many photos of that in here, but there are some turtle photos coming down the line. And again, just this is the main dock on the front of Loggerhead Key. And, you know, we spent many an hour out here just sitting here, you know, appreciating the passing thunderstorms and things of that nature that, you know, when we're landlocked due to weather and whatnot, this wasn't a bad place to go and hang out. You know, there's no Wi-Fi out here. You're not going to go sit in your phone inside all day and look at Reels or TikTok or whatever. You know, you had to find the original Reels. And we just found a lot of peace on this little stretch of sand in this dock, and it brought us a lot of enjoyment. And, you know, there would be bait balls beneath the dock on a daily basis, and barracuda and sharks and whatnot. It just was a very fun spot for us. And this is going to be a video of the boat that we did bring out.
Okay.
And so this is something that made us really, I think, stand out as artist resident, as a duo that we were one of the first ever groups to bring a motorboat to the Dry Tortugas. The first. So it's an inflatable dinghy. It's an 11-foot Saturn dinghy, completely inflatable. Keep that in mind. You know, we're very remote. Yes, exactly. Holes. Yeah, and I'll just play that one more time. But this was our chariot, our daily chariot. And we learned how to set it up and break it down real easy. And whenever the weather was good, this is what we were doing. And we'd take it to that 1-mile radius around Garden Key where we could fish legally. Like so. And we learned, you know, as a photographer, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but Austin is a gyotaku artist. So he does if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's a Japanese traditional fish printing method where you cover the fish in a charcoal paste, lay rice paper over it, and it creates and you can peel it back and it'll leave a perfect I don't know, impression, thank you. And so a large part of this project was actually catching fish for Austin's project, which was, worked out for me because he also loves to cook. And I like to take photos of fish, and I wanted to take photos of fish and of the reefs that we were exploring and all these places that we were able to see because we were looking for fish to eat. Really it tied into each other, and that was the great kind of partnership that we had. Was our projects combined perfectly. We were searching for remote little patch reefs we'd seen on Google Earth like you'd seen before. We'd zoom in and find somewhere that looked interesting, or we'd just find a day like this and just drift for hours and look down at 5, 10, 20 feet below us, and you'd see the reef and rock beneath you and be like, wow, that looks pretty cool. Let's throw the anchor in and get in here. And we got it pretty dialed though, running a minimal setup. You've got your bucket, radio, very important, keep it on hand, the fishing rods, the backpack had all my camera gear in it. Austin's legs tucked up there, with the fishing cooler in between his legs. Our dive gear is probably somewhere underneath us. We brought everything with us for the day. We had to. There was no going back home once we had left the dock. And again, just one of those moments, thighs perfectly lathered up with sunscreen. You had to be ready for, that long days under the sun looking for fish, and in the shadow of the fort, nothing doesn't get much better than that. And stay close to the fort so you can run back there if you need to have any sort of access to resources and whatnot. But a lot of our days look like this. Very memorable, peaceful, not eventful sometimes very eventful, but just great moments. And I included this. This is Austin after catching. So this is an example of his work. And it gives you an idea. This was one of the first barracudas that we'd caught, and actually first barracuda we'd ever eaten together, and it was delicious, I gotta say. So that was his project. I can play that just real quick one more time. I don't need there's another photo down the line, but just I want to talk about that because, it's one thing to be a fisherman in the Keys and to hire a charter or have a boat and go out and target a specific species like mutton snapper or yellowtail on any given day down here. That's something that we all love and want to do because those are prize table fare. But out here, we were winging it most of the time and catch whatever we caught. If we wanted to eat fish, we'd bring it back. We weren't looking for something specific, although we would have liked that. But when we caught this barracuda, we looked at each other and said, yeah, let's bring it back and eat it and print it. And again, this project is extended past this residency. I've spent a lot of time out there, finishing this book off in the past 2 years after that month we lived out there. And just to kind of provide some more context into what went into the book, a lot of my days after the actual residency and the dinghy that we had looked a lot more like this. Drifting or paddling up to 10 miles a day in a kayak. Again, same thing, fishing right up my side, and a waterproof backpack with all my camera gear in it. And some of these, moments, these are the days that you dream of, that I dream of personally. I'd see a weather report that had 4 days of glass slicked off conditions, and I would call up somebody and say, we got to get down there as soon as possible. Can you come, please? I'm desperate for this. I need to document this. This is what I wanted to capture to showcase, the best sides of this national park. And when you're there, you're exposed, you're remote, and you're dreaming of moments like this. And it's unlike, I would not be out there this past month. It's been a little rough out there. But so these are again just drifting for miles and miles across beautiful expanses of seagrass meadows and just looking for anything, like looking for something a turtle that would pop its head up, and you'd look down and you'd see a patch reef full of life with mutton snapper and hogfish just in 4 feet of water, 5 feet of water, and you'd throw the anchor and get in because that's what you had to do, and that's what I was doing, just embracing every day, looking for the next photo that I was proud of. And again, just going into a little bit more of that weather. So during the residency, Austin and I did actually have to evacuate Loggerhead Key twice, and that was due to 2 tropical storms that we had to go through. And if they had been Category 1, we would have had to evacuate to the mainland. We would have had to come back to Key West. Luckily, that was not the case, and they breached that tropical storm level, and they moved us to Garden Key, the fort. We were able to live within the fort walls and staff housing for a week and a half, 2 weeks of our residency. which was equally as unique as living on Loggerhead Key. It provided us this whole picture of what it was like to live on these islands, and we got to experience both of these very different places. And this photo, I think, was taken after one of those tropical storms had just passed. The sun finally broke through, and we were two of the only people on the island, aside from a few park staff that had stayed to watch over things. And it was just very incredible to be witness and to have an island to yourself like that. This is a photo from one of the park's most visited diving destinations. It's known as the Windjammer. It's a wreck off the south side of Loggerhead Key. Very, very cool wreck to dive, to snorkel. It sticks out of the water. I don't remember the exact length of it. We have people here who can answer that later, but it was full of life. Again, just one of those places that constantly was just really enjoyable to get in the water with and see these resident Goliath grouper, of which there are many down there. Love seeing Goliath. They're sometimes equally as curious as you as you are of them, and which can be a little intimidating. They kind of come up to you and grunt and do a lot of weird stuff. But just really beautiful fish to document, and especially in it's kind of hard to tell. There's a second bigger one that's just kind of hanging out in the shadow there. You can see the corner of its tail. So this is going to take us back to Loggerhead Key again. This was our backyard. This is the reef known as Little Africa, which is off the western side of Loggerhead Key. And our house was just to the left of the lighthouse there. And this is the old boathouse, which has since, kind of started to collapse due to erosion. There's a photo. It's collapsed a little even more so than it, has since Hurricane Ian. More photos of that will show up. But for the most part, during the residency, we were just so lucky to have, you could walk out behind your house, get in the sand, throw your dive gear on, get in the water, and you were on a reef. And that makes it, one of the most unique dive and snorkel destinations I've ever been to in the Key. There's not many other places in the Upper Keys, again, and down the Key West, where you can just jump off in the water and have access that close, that quick, without taking a boat out to get to it. And so it was a real pleasure to have this on our day-to-day adventures whenever the weather was bad or whenever the west side was the leeward side of the island. So really wonderful spot to take photos. And this will take us back to Garden Key. And if you remember that map, it had Garden is the fort, and then Bush Key, and then it goes down, wraps down to the south is Long Key. And so this is a sandbar spit that's between Bush and Long Key that, in every storm is just constantly shifting. It's either building up and completely formed as one long land bridge, or it's this. And you find these incredible sand channels and channels that'll come through these islands, and on low tide, you get out there and the water and currents will push through, and again, the bait loves to form against the shallows here, and you find sharks and tarpon and all sorts of life, and you can sit on the edge of the sand and just with a good pair of polarized sunglasses and stare off into the water and just wait for something remarkable to happen, because it was almost surely bound to happen at some point. And so we spent a lot of time out here, and just really memorable, really beautiful place, and it's always changing out here. So this photo, if you ever do visit the park and you make it to this sand spit, it almost surely will not look anything like what it does in this photo. And this is, one of those photos that I personally love. This is one of my favorites in the book that I documented over the past 3 years, and it just, from taking our dinghy out and going to wade a flat somewhere and seeing what happens, and just catching this out of the corner of my eye and finding a sea fan just sitting there in half out of the water, fully alive, reflecting the fading sun, and just stood out. And again, just another unique moment that I just haven't really experienced anywhere else, and I knew it just really, really loved this moment. And it's, again, the bathymetry here, it's hard to explain, but there's this rock shoal. This has all kind of been, reworked due to Hurricane Ian, but it's another unique place in the park. There's this huge rock shoal that kind of pinnacled here, and I'm standing on the shallow side. It's this long expanse of seagrass and shallow flat, and on the other side of this shoal, it drops down to 15 and 20 feet within 30 feet off the beach, 30 feet off the rocks. Again, just very unique location that you don't find in too many other places around here. And this goes back to, our walks around Loggerhead Key, which were in pursuit of these moments. And this was the one and only sea turtle nest that we actually saw hatch, which was really cool for us. We knew it was happening. You'd see their little tracks all day long and be like, oh man, we missed another one. We'll get him one of these days, hopefully. And one of the natural resource interns gave us a radio call, told us that they were starting to hatch. And we were in that, our house doing some tying knots or something, reading some book that had been left in the house on the far side of the island, got our stuff together and ran as quick as we could, got there just on time, and watched this sea turtle boil, is what they call them, because that's exactly what it looks like when it happens. And it happens so fast, so quick, and once the first one kind of comes out of the sand, they all erupt, and it boils, and it happens so fast, it's almost hard to get the camera gear ready and quick enough to document it and make sure you capture it and memorialize this. But this was incredible, and the next photo will potentially upset a few people, but it's a really cool experience that I just could not believe I was witnessing. But these sea turtles have to make it to the water, and we all know that the likelihood of a sea turtle living to making it to adult maturity is very slim. It's 1 in a million. It's a very famous fact for the existence of a sea turtle. And so their first wall of defense or attackers that they have to hit when they get to the water is mangrove snapper. And so to follow these sea turtle into the water and then see that these mangrove snapper, it almost had seemed like they could hear the flaps of their fins or something hit the surface of the water, or they could smell them, but they were just so tuned into this immediately. And I've just never seen such a feeding response happen at such a quick pace. These fish are very aware that this happens on this island. It's very much a part of the day-to-day basis, and in this part of the year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of their main sources of food, are these hatchlings that are coming off the beach every day. But to watch this happen in person and to document that, really, as a fisherman especially, I just was eternally fascinated by it. I could do this not all day, but it was amazing to see this happen in real time and to understand how difficult this journey starts, especially for these turtles out here in this very remote place. This is a little different. It's not a sea turtle getting eaten by a mangrove snapper, but it's a charismatic blue crab. One of those, we're familiar with these guys up here. There's nothing different or new about this, but just loves stumbling across the old classics that we've in the Upper Keys. I think I'm more used to finding them in the muddier, backcountry waters of the Everglades and, seagrass beds, mud beds, and things of that nature. And find this one over a crystal clear, shallow flat over sand just stood out to me. And, it's a simple moment that I really just enjoyed documenting. And one of those things, this is in that sandbar channel in between Bush and Long Key that is ever changing. But this is one of the guys I got to meet when I was out there. And another simple moment, but we're all familiar with moon jellyfish. They come through in waves. They annoy us if we're free divers or snorkelers, or if you've been in the water during winter time when the waves come through down here. It's miserable and you get stung and it's horrible, and hopefully nobody has to pee on you and all that stuff. And but down here, again, just having the time and appreciation to just see one or two, and on a beautiful glassy day, there's not a ripple disturbing the surface, and just to kind of experiment with them and take a photo that is something little comes across as a little different and beautiful, and just a beautiful moment that happened. This is off Loggerhead Key, right off there at Little Africa. And the sharks. I've got a few photos of the sharks. I wish I had more. But there is most definitely a very healthy and curious shark population in the Dry Tortugas, which we learned pretty quickly, especially when you're in an inflatable dinghy. You got to be careful out there, and we would often sit on a reef or something, chumming with the fish that we had caught before, and you know, there's blood in the water, there's sharks that come, and, you know, we were pretty cautious there and luckily escaped most of the, you know, most risk due to shark. We actually punctured a few holes in the boat due to snapper spines though. And then we'd be sitting there fishing and you'd hear and we learned pretty quick to bring a roll of duct tape with us, you know. So that was fun. But nothing more severe than that. But another shark photo. This is one of the resident lemon sharks that lives on the main park dock there, and you know, just someone you see one of these. There's a few of these sharks. They're beautiful. You see them quite often, especially when people are feeding the fish off the dock. They became staples, and you know, sharks that we really just kind of, you know, they would be annoying to an extent. You're trying to fish for a meal or a snapper, and they'd come up and, you know, take it off your hook. But so did the Goliath grouper, which there are two in this photo. It's hard to see them, but there's two Goliath beneath them, and it would become this gigantic feeding ball at the dock, and just amazing. All this life that you can see right there, without having to travel too far, and especially at night, you know, when you're not doing too much of anything, filleting the fish for dinner, and you know, this is your entertainment for the night. And it really became a wonderful thing. We all love stars, right? This is one of my favorite parts, if not my favorite part, about being in the Dry Tortugas. And that's just the unfettered, you know, just undisturbed skies, clear of light pollution, no obstructions aside from a Starlink satellite here and there. But you know, you're 67 miles to Key West and 106 to Cuba. It's one of the most remote national parks in the United States, aside from, you know, one in Alaska that doesn't even have roads to get to. But it's similar here, you know, you can only get here by boat or ferry. And to have these kind of skies on the right kind of night, you can sit and do nothing on the sand all night long and just stare up in amazement at, you know, the wonders of the galaxies. And I got another photo here of Garden Key, one of the luckier shots I got of, you know, a shooting star pinging off in the background. And that light, it looks like light pollution, but it's actually a lightning strike that lit up the sky off in the distance and created this ball of light that my camera picked up on. But again, just one of those magical nights, magical places. There's not much else to say other than that. It's, you know, I could do this every night for the rest of my life.
What time of year was that?
August. This was during the residency. So this was, August of 2021. And during this might have been I don't think it's the Perseid or the Geminid. It might be. There might be a meteor shower in August that I'm not able to remember. And this is, there's a few other smaller sandbar islands that are north of Garden Key, which are, again, just difficult to access, hard to get there. Hopefully would love to return in my own boat to explore these places, but I love this photo. This is a photo of Middle Key. There's 3 sandbar islands. It's called, you know, Hospital, Middle, and East Key. And, but just think it's so cool to see the bathymetry. Again, the bottom out here is very unique in the way that it just goes from so deep, 40 feet, to so shallow, so quickly. And these next photos are some of the more, you know, maybe depressing, maybe not, but they mark the change that I've witnessed. So, you know, we started this project, Austin and I, in 2021 in August, and to finish this book, I've spent the last 2 years returning to fill that archive of imagery and to continue documenting this place to create the body of work that's now in the book. And by doing so, I've also been witness to a number of different changes. You know, a lot of things that have been hard to come to terms with and to grasp, and other things are more natural. But you know, and this stems from the islands to the coral, especially. And for those that know, you know, we're not having the greatest. Corals are really struggling. Let's just put it that way. But this is Loggerhead Key during the residency, and this is Loggerhead Key after Hurricane Ian, ironically named. And I'll leave that up there for a second. But you know, it is amazing. There is a part of me that feels grateful to be witness to such tremendous amounts of change on a small island chain within such a short amount of time. To be there to watch this happen in real time and to have it documented. It just keeps things interesting. I feel like I was meant to kind of be here to some extent. I don't know. I was meant to document it, and I'm very happy I can show both of these, the before and after. But Loggerhead Key has changed significantly, and this is 2023. I did not make it back to this year, so I can't speak for what it looks like now, but this is what it looked like then. These are the corals, right? This is, again, one of those things that for someone who grew up in the Keys is harder to grasp, harder to acknowledge and to understand how to deal with. But these are the beautiful brain corals that I got to swim over on Little Africa. This is the reef that's right off the beach on Loggerhead behind our house there. Not a year later, September 2022, this coral here is currently dying from disease. And to see that in a person, to understand what was going on and to recognize that, now, today, this coral probably just looks like a bleak slab of stone. Hard to know what to do with that. It's my home. These things are happening here, and they're ever present, and they're constantly, we're kind of fighting an uphill battle with a lot of this stuff, but I try to look, I look for the silver lining always. I look for the things in nature that are still very much beautiful, which there is so much of it. But to see this was definitely hard. And then again, more hurricane-caused change. This is Long Key. This is where the famous frigate colony nested and lived on this side, and this is after Hurricane Ian. And interesting, crazy, the black mangroves on this island will forever be changed, and hopefully will rebound one day, or new ones will sprout. That's always the hope. Only time will tell. But one of the coolest things about this is watching the frigates. This is before. This is another before photo, and it gives you an idea of how the life that's there, and the only way to really get this view. And we were on as volunteers, we were able to join during the nesting surveys, and so that's how we were able to get this photo. Otherwise, you cannot do this on your own. But just having the sky full of frigates is incredible out there, and watching them by the hundreds fly above you was really amazing. And to have them come back after the storm in the same amount of numbers was amazing to me. I loved seeing how many of them survived, and they're resilient, and they lasted, and they made it through a Category 4, Category 5 eye wall that went over the Dry Tortugas National Park to see how they stayed. And I have just recently learned that a lot of these birds are now living in the Marquesas, but the fact that they made it really brought me a lot of joy. I was happy to hear that. And again, one of those things I look for when I'm out there, aside from all of this, the difficult and hard things to observe, the coral disease and change that happened through the hurricanes, there's still just so much abundance. There's so much life. This place is, it's incredible. And every time I go out there, you see something new, even still, and so this is one of those photos of just one of the last years I was there. I saw, the biggest school of pilchards, this bait fish that every fisherman down here knows that I've ever seen in my life. Thousands, almost hundreds of thousands of them, just this gigantic wall that would move, push back and forth along the shoreline, and would have just so many species feeding on it. And it was like what you're watching Planet Earth in real time, right in front of you, the whole, really, really amazing. And we're kind of, coming to the end here, but, I wanted to just tag, this some of the behind the scenes stuff. This is what we were, the photos of us that, we hope to have for the rest of our lives. And the mutton snapper I caught off the dock, off the beach, it's like, didn't have to be on a boat or a kayak to catch that again. That's a really special catch for me. Natural resource interns and employees that we were working with, wading across the seagrass, the shallows, camera gear in hand, and a life jacket that goes off accidentally because you're in the rain. Austin had to deal with that one. Not very happy about that. His safe, but and then the ghost crab in the far left, things like that. And so here's a video. Oh, it's not audio disconnected, but you get an idea. This is, our engine stopped working, so we had to paddle back to the fort, and that was just one of the experiences. Luckily it was a calm day, but a funny experience nonetheless. Let's see what's next. We're coming. Yeah, and I had to include this of Austin. This is one of, on the very last day, you know, it's a prize catch for us. It was the only one we caught during the month we were out there. They're hard to target when it's just a couple guys in a dinghy. And you need a crustacean. They really like shrimp or crab or something of that level. But you can, this is called hog dogging. You take a yo-yo and you swim in the water, and because you're not allowed to spearfish in the park, so you have to kind of work around that. And this is one of the ways to do it. And so you literally fish underwater with a Cuban yo-yo and a big weight with a hook, and you find the fish and you can catch them that way. And this was on the very last day. It was murky, and we saw some of the coolest fish behavior out there, hogfish behavior out there, and and this was awesome. I just got my first permit on fly before this too. For those that know, that's pretty big too. So it was an awesome way to end the trip. And then Austin, printed that. And so these are some of those photos of just the process. And I wish I could show you a million stuff of his work. It's incredible. And the process of doing this. And these are some of the first of hogfish he's ever done, I think maybe. But to see this process and to work alongside that was very inspiring for me while I was out there, and allowed us to both kind of work off each other. And so just really, really cool way to blend projects. And I think we're coming to the end here, and just more of his work hanging up. We caught is this the Cuda? That's the Cuda. Yep. It's the Cuda hanging from the trip, and that's it. Thank you all very much.